So thank you. So if you don't want, to be seen for some reason or anything, just turn your screen off. Okay, so we've got a lot to cover today, so I would like to just start. Hi, my name is Florence Wong. Welcome everybody to Unique Barriers to Success for Southeast Asian Students and Families. Next slide, Amy. Just to let you know a little bit about what APISBMA is, it stands for Asian Pacific Islander School Board Members Association. I guess I'll just read it. In the state of California, there are over 750,000 Asian American, Filipino, and Pacific Islander students who attend K-12 public schools. That's about 12% of all students in California K-12 schools. And their needs are very diverse and often overlooked. So for more than 30 years, APISBMA has advocated for an educational curriculum that more adequately represents the contributions and viewpoints of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, and has developed coalitions with other educational, ethnic, and community organizations to promote equitable and quality education for all children. And we have a website, APISBMA.org. It's slightly needs a little updating, but it's got some good information about what we've done in the past couple of years in terms of helping with establishing ethnic studies in California and other activities. Next slide. Okay. Told you we have information that you can download. Back to their slide. And also, if you have any feedback after today's presentation, or if you have questions about joining, feel free to email me. I'm at that apisbma.membership@gmail.com. That's the email address that sent you information about today's talk. Next slide. And I just want to say thank you to the APISBMA Equity Committee. We're the ones that put this panel presentation together. Just for identification purposes, I've listed the Jiwa Mak from Del Mar Union School District, and his wife, who's an attorney, not a trustee, Stephanie Chow, was also part of our meeting sometimes and actually made the connection to us with Sara, one of our speakers today. So thank you to Stephanie. Naomi Nakano Matsumoto, who is also the APISBMA president from Fremont Union High School District. Susanna Wong Ordway from San Ramon Valley Unified School District. Thank you so much, Equity Committee, for putting this together, because I think that this topic of trying to understand the needs of our Southeast Asian students and families has not been addressed like at all, I would just go ahead and say. So I'm so grateful to our speakers today and that we were able to put this together. And thank you to all those who are in attendance here, because you're really showing that you care about these students and how we can better serve them. Okay, Amy, you can stop sharing my slides. Okay, so let's just get started. So our first speaker is Dr. Suli Saro. She is a council member in Long Beach City, in Long Beach in Southern California for District 6. So Suli, you can go ahead and start.
I don't know if you heard me. It said that, can you hear me? I should.
You unmuted just 1 second ago.
Oh yeah, I don't know why it muted me. And then, but I think I'm okay now. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak tonight. Thank you, Sara, for reaching out. behalf of the API School Board Members Association. Thank you everyone for being here, for serving our state in education. You know, as I think is shared, my story is, I would like to say, maybe is representative of more around my generation, those who were born in the refugee camps that came here, which is different based on those who came here maybe as teens. So I just wanted to make sure I share that, you know, I don't know why it's not moving. No, it's not moving. Okay, there you go. And so I think that just a little bit history is that the genocide started in April 17, 1975, and ended in January 7, 1979. I was born, my mother was pregnant with me, and then I was born in the refugee camps on her way traveling through the jungles of between Cambodia to Thailand. And during that time, my oldest brother was, my brother was, I think, one at that time. And then my second oldest brother was born during the war, which still has a lot of impact to him to this day. And then my youngest brother was born in the Philippines. So she had babies along the way. But this is us on our way to the Philippines, where photos were taken of us before we went to the Philippines to be then transferred to the US. I was born in 1980, so I am, you know, sharing my age. I'm 42 now, but the impact is still real. We first resettled in San Diego, and, you know, at that time, and then moved to Echo Park. But at that time, we still didn't know where a lot of our family members were. Being young, I didn't understand, but I just remember there was just a lot of emotions, you know, just a lot of intense emotion. So I think early on, I just didn't know how to express how I was feeling. And that, I think, has an impact on me and many others who grew up in an environment of trauma. So we lived in San Diego with, you know, like many refugees, in a 3-bedroom apartment, but we had a family in each bedroom. And that was the same when we moved later on to Echo Park in Los Angeles, because many of my family member, my parents included, found work in the garment industry in downtown LA. So this is here, you know, one of the very few birthday celebration we had, and that was for my oldest brother. I don't remember growing up having a birthday cake, but he got a birthday cake. So that stayed with me because we just didn't have a lot of money. That what we had there was from, you know, I think food stamps money we get, or I think at that time they still offer welfare. But I think I have to just click it. So, you know, this is my family to this day, just to show contrast how far we've come. I have children of my own, I have an 11-year-old and a 6-year-old right now. But I've come a long way in that, you know, when I have a little, you know, started with a little bit education higher, but throughout that, when we first arrived, it was really hard because many people didn't know about Southeast Asian as much as some did about the history, but they didn't understand you know, what the term of what our language is spoken, what our religious backgrounds were. Many of us aren't Christians, we're Buddhists. And so I got really lost in the educational system. They placed me in ESL for Chinese speaker. I got even more confused because I still didn't understand what people were saying. You put me from an English class to then an ESL class for Chinese speaker. I don't really understand because I was young, how it got lost in translation. But that's just kind of where I had a hard time reading and writing. I don't understand how I was even able to progress. But I think just with a lot of hard work and perseverance, I was able to figure things out along the way, and then even advocated for myself to go into the honors school. I had one of the most significant figure for me was my eighth grade counselor at that time when I moved, who really listened to me when I said, look, I'm a lot smarter than the class you're putting me in. Give me a test, whatever it is I need to do to get into that other class where they're reading books that I really want to read, classes where I can learn. And I just remember her putting me in the Gates or the honors classes because I advocated for myself. That was really pivotal because it allowed me to be on track to be around smarter kids, kids who had parents who were guiding them how to get their A through G requirements in college, as well as making sure that they even were thinking about college. So I happened to just even go to UC Santa Cruz because I had a friend who was in my AP class that did her mom was going to drive her around to college. My parents was not engaged at all. They were like, just do whatever you need to do to stay out of trouble, really was the attitude. So, and that's where, again, that having that friend whose mom was willing to have me join her to do college tours, because I was able to get into most of the UCs I applied for and chose UC Santa Cruz. Of course, I went, I didn't even know what a major was. I didn't know, you're supposed to take these classes in order to fulfill a major. I just followed a friend I made over there at that time. And she was like, well, what do you want to, I asked her what she's going to do. She said, oh, I'm going to be a doctor. And I said, okay, I guess I'll be a doctor too. So I took classes that she took. I mean, mind you, I'm a college student and I still didn't understand, had no counselors, had no one really helping me orientate. I was just super lost, but I happened to just be on a track around smart people who knew what they were doing. And, I probably should have majored in sociology because I barely finished getting my bio degree, luckily, because I realized, wow, I crossed out medical school because I was like, I don't know what I was thinking. I was terrible at math. Again, I barely made it through my bio classes. So that's kind of where I don't really know through that phase if I would have been able to make it through college if I wasn't, if I didn't have resiliency in persevering through hardship and knowing that I had to keep advocating for myself. And I had to keep explaining where my family came from, because I think that there's this Asian we do know about this Asian model minority stories that people always have, or images they have of us, and that we're all kind of just Asian people, but not realizing how we all have different histories of immigration to the US, and also different challenges of when we came to the US. So I had to always explain that because of, being a science student. But, but I really love school, which is why I kept going. I kept going. I went back to get my master's and my doctorate because I also knew that education was a pathway out of poverty. I knew that very early on when I met all of those smart kids in my class who also had better and nicer things. And I'm thinking, well, maybe if I take the classes they take and I follow the pathway they follow, I'll be successful too. So I just knew distinctly it was important to keep ensuring that I improve myself, but also making sure my voice was heard. And I think that is where it was pivotal for me in college when I realized, it really doesn't matter how hard I work in school if I'm going to just only help myself, because my community will still have challenges. Other young people in my community will still have challenges. And so what I had to make sure I kept doing was to organize and advocate, because if we can get and inspire more people to speak up in the community and get more involved, then it's really helping all of us. So it really went from a shift for me during college, the disparity and challenges I had, because I didn't have a strong foundation. I was always frustrated that, I want to change that cycle. So that's why I kind of ended up in the path of going on this immigrant workers' freedom ride. I became a labor organizer, fighting for janitors. And it became more of to fight for my voice was to fight also for others. And I had to learn the tools and how to do that. And that's where community labor organizing is such an important skill that I learned to not only inspire and empower others to speak up and tell their stories, but also to fight for it, which is how I then ended up running a nonprofit called My Girls in Action, where at that time, working with young women to ensure that they were going into higher education, getting the wraparound services, because they weren't getting support at home and they weren't getting support at school, but also to be able to organize against the issues that were happening in that time. They were deporting people like me who were 1.5 generation, but I didn't commit any misdemeanors, so I was fine. But those who did ended up getting deported because they became felonies since they weren't U.S. citizen. And those were our brothers that were getting deported. So not only were we dealing with challenges of educational attainment, telling our story of who we are, because we don't see ourselves in history books, we don't see ourselves in media, nobody represented us even politically either. So it was important to inspire young people to do that themselves. And we did cultural historical arts where they would videotape them telling stories, writing poetry, being able to articulate without just straight talking, but in fun ways, right? And so, of course, I just didn't stay in the US. I also worked with women in Cambodia too, because it was important for me to go back and help and other women who were also facing barriers. So I partnered with a friend, helped with her leadership, and form a foundation, which is still running to this day. This Sudaya I did to help them fundraise to get them going. But this is really around how do we continue to keep connecting and telling stories and not really just stay in a place of where I don't know what to do or I can't do anything to help. So this was all my outlet to ensure there's representation, to build people's leadership, to tell their story and why people need to support them or support us. So lastly, I went on to advocacy. I work for Asian American Advancing Justice LA, doing health advocacy again to ensuring that our voices were heard in what we needed in the area of healthcare, language translation, cultural competent materials for people who, needs to have information given to them in the way that they understand it so that children like me aren't serving as interpreters for parents in medical languages, right? That was another thing I did a lot growing. I was serving interpreter when I can barely understand what was going on myself, but it was better than nothing. So anyway, I went on to continue to do more public service work. I worked for State Senator Ricardo Lara. Sarah let me know at that time they were looking for somebody, and I jumped on it to work for him, who was our state senator. Made sure that we acknowledge at that time that the Cambodian genocide, that we have the largest Cambodian population in California, and we did a resolution in the state capitol for the first time since Cambodians arrived here to acknowledge the Cambodian genocide. And that happened about in 2018, sorry. So that was also another significant milestone in order to trigger curriculum development for schools to know what happened, because if we're not acknowledging them in these official capacity, how could schools acknowledge and create curriculum for them? So previously worked as a professor at Cal State LA teaching community organizing. I don't do that anymore because I have my current job working as a project development specialist, meanwhile serving as a council member. The other sector of my work is I care very much about the environment and sustainability, which is why I work in providing grants to cities and nonprofit building parks and preserving open space in our urban area. So in closing about, my work continues, I think, in the sense that I want to continue to uplift many others now in the political sphere, inspiring young people to do public service, inspiring us to speak and share our stories and to do these cultural celebration, and so that people understand who we are in the city. People to this day in Long Beach still don't even know that there's the largest Cambodian community in Long Beach. And I think that has a lot to do with the way that our city has been siloed. But I'm hoping to continue to change that through education around things we do now yearly, which is Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I just started doing that annually. They didn't do it regularly before, even though we have about 60 to 70,000 APIs in the city. So anyway, thank you so much for listening to my story. I think that first and foremost, some takeaway around my story is just that, it's really important. We, even as ourselves as educator, how do we ensure that there are opportunities to always share our stories or educational opportunities around representation, inclusivity, about diversity, even people's immigration story, because there's an assumption too that Asian people are all they came here at the same time. They don't understand the different migration history or the contribution that we have made, significant contributions that we have made to the state and the country. So thank you very much. I'm open for any question that people have them.
Thank you so much, Suli. So I'm actually going to ask the audience to hold their questions so that we can get through all the speakers, and then we'll have time at the end to do Q&A. Okay, so the next speaker is Sara Pol-Lim.
Thank you, Lauren. Let me share my screen. Okay. You can see it, right? Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to be asked to share this unique barrier to success for our Southeast Asian students. And I wanted to thank APISBMA for putting this event together. And also Stephanie, Floren for reaching out to our community. It's so important that we share our story with educators like all of you. So I'm so glad to be here. Let's see. Not only, so again, my name is Sara Pol-Lim. I, like Suli, used to work in a community organization as well as executive director of United Cambodian Community. It's been an organization in Long Beach for over 40 years. And I also work in the field of a lot of community outreach and education, and currently with the Orange County Department of Education, assisting in developing curriculum that I will share a little bit later. So this is one of the important topic to me, and not only that, I did a research study on my doctorate in education, like Suli, Cal State Long Beach, to understand why is such a barrier in our community, especially our Southeast Asian community. And because of that, this journey of making sure that not only my educational background in assisting community, but mentoring and hoping that not only educator like you, but student in the community, second generation, and later getting a chance to understand who they are and what impact it is to them in order for them to pursue higher education.
So Sara,
So,
that's Florence, you're in, can you put it in presentation mode? We can kind of see your slides on the side.
okay. That,
You can go to slideshow and then just, yeah,
right.
right there at the top next to animation.
Did I?
You added an accessory.
Yeah, I did edit. So like,
Yeah, go to slideshow where it is, go right. Yeah, further right at the top.
Right.
Next to
animations.
Yeah, yeah. with all this, can you see it now?
Yeah, and then go from beginning.
Oh.
Okay.
It's that first there on the left side. It says from beginning on the top left.
Top left.
From beginning.
Okay, I see.
Is
that
perfect? Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm doing a lot of Zoom, but I'm still not so good at it. All right. So the purpose of this discussion is that I know that Floren asked is to help raise awareness of the experience that Southeast Asian student is going through, as Suli share a little bit of her personal experience, and hoping that remind all of us in education that not all students are created equal, right? Especially for those who came from and with parents who carry a lot of emotional and mental burden. And so this is also myth, right? The assumption that because we all look Asian, that we're the go-getter, we work hard, and we achieve goal, but it's not it's not the same standard to all. We just have to acknowledge that each group have different historical impact where they came from. So Suli, I don't use the slide. So when I use the slide, does that okay, there you go.
Yeah, you just press your mouse.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
So when we talk about academic impact, I know that the CARE article back in 2011 showed the lowest academic achievement among Southeast Asian students, and especially Cambodian and Hmong is in the bottom. I spoke to a colleague of mine in Santa Ana, work with the school district, who's a doctorate as well, share with me the current rate of Vietnamese student is getting a little better now. The able to enter the higher academic, that's been bachelor degree and over. And that impact, not only does Cambodian have the lowest higher academic achievement, college degree and up, higher mental health need as well. And that's where the challenge that we have in the community, that we wanted to see a lot more teachers that are Cambodian, and a lot more leader and city council, like Suli's mentioned, political field, all of those feel that we need representation. And education is the foundation for us to support the community in terms of reaching that goal. So in my study, in my research, based on the impact that I look at, how does parental historical trauma impact later generation? So through looking at literature from the Holocaust, from other genocide era, and we also have specific Cambodian genocide, confirm that intergenerational trauma exists. So it's passing on to the later generation, especially second generation. And because of that, it's impact their attention span, their motivation, their ability to succeed in school, right? And also what impact them and prevent them of reaching the highest academic goal is parenting role reversal. Suli mentioned from personal experience of having to translate for their parent, and because of that, they act as the mediator for not only language barrier but also cultural, right, barrier as well. And that's important with the family dynamic when parental engagement in school is lacking because of language and culture. And then parental engagement in life is excluded because of parental trauma themselves, right? And because of that, younger generation having a hard time fitting in, whether having a proper support from school or from home, and that left that gap in terms of where is their a higher vision in life, right? And that's where we hope that the study that we found is supporting the later generation in helping them to find their way into the system where no other student should be left behind. So again, in academic, as I've seen the voice that being heard now, Suli serve as the perfect example, and it's a much needed achievement and example to show second generation that because each of us have story, and you're not alone now, that in education we see the need of supporting system, whether it's emotional and social, and pretty much resource, so that teacher would know that let's not measure everybody in the same standard. Not all, right, should have which. So I came here as a teenager, and my language gap sometimes still exists, I would think. So the most important thing about helping student achieving educational success and also personal growth is to really promote the learning and healing for them to understand the historical significance of their parent, where they came from, and in turn support their communication, right, structure within their home, and whether their parents share their story with student or not, they have an opportunity to learn in the school system. And this recommendation was already adopted, like Suli mentioned, based on Prop 168. The state of California and the California Department of Education already commissioned Orange County Department of Education to develop a Southeast Asian curriculum. And it's right now it's 3 separate ethnic program for the Vietnamese. Refugee experience is one. There's a team that handles just that curriculum development, and there's a team that handles the Hmong refugee experience group for that, and then there's a team that support the Cambodian curriculum study that I'm supporting it right now. So that was key in terms of how our educational system is looking at how can we better serve students by providing context, by providing information so that we prepare students to thrive, right, in their educational career. So again, the current work is the curriculum that I mentioned. Those are the 3 development in the process. I can't share in detail, but I can say that the curriculum timeline would be completed by the end of 2024, and the state of California Department of Education wish to, once they adopt the curriculum, they will disseminate it, ensure that all school districts in California will recommend and will also implement and practice support the curriculum. So I think that's it for me. Any questions? Should we wait till
Sarah,
after?
yeah, we'll wait till the end. Thank you so much. That was
You're
great.
welcome.
Okay, next speaker we have is Esther Wong. And Esther, can you tell everybody a little bit about your background?
Okay. My name is Esther Wong, and I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and I came here for college and graduated with an MSW and later got my license as a clinical social worker. I started working in a community organization in Oakland in the Bay Area. And after a couple of years working in the outpatient mental health clinic, I was assigned to head a team of case manager, Asian bilingual case manager, to serve the people with developmental disabilities, and mainly in the East Bay. So I did it for about 34 years. And currently I'm retired. And well, my background is very different from Suli and Sarah. I'm not from the school side. I am mostly on the service side. Yeah. And well, I like to talk a little bit about the cultural values and the historical background of the Southeast Asian that I serve. In the team, we have coverage for 11 languages, including a few of the Southeast Asian languages. Yeah, so I really can share a lot of the things Suli and Sarah presented. Yeah, I visited the family. I have to assess cases and all that. Yeah, and so I don't need to go into the detail, but I would say the cultural value a lot is sharing, the Southeast Asian sharing the Chinese Confucianism. Okay, this is about respect for their parents and authorities, and it's very much about social ranking, and they place high rank for academians and low rank for business people, and high value for education, and very loyal to family and friends. And they talk a lot about filial pieties too, but I don't know how this can be enforced. And these days it is difficult for the newer generation. Yeah. And I always see that the family is very important to Asians and versus individual. So especially in decision making, family's decision is always greater than the individual decision making. And also they always like to talk about interdependence versus independence. This is very American. Yeah. So I see a lot the parents who are getting old and then have to rely on their kids. So the interdependence was really from their early days. They already, implant this kind of concept in their mind. So yeah, they are not really for the independence part. Yeah. I mean, individual independence. Yeah. And as what Suli and Sarah talked about, they came from a war-torn countries, and they went through a lot of trauma, and they even carry that experience to settle down in United States. And this is, I mean, to settle down here is not of their choice, but there's no other choice. They have to escape from the war. And so it is very difficult to them. And the settlement to most of them are very difficult. Yeah. And because I will talk about the barriers they encountered. And well, in many of the Southeast Asian, the multi-generation households still exist. Yeah. And I would say, especially childcare is so expensive. So the immigrants and the refugee parents are the babysitters, most of them, to help out. So yeah, I want to move on to talk about those multiple barriers they encountered. Of course, language is the major barrier. It is very hard for them to pick up English, very hard. Yeah, grammatically it's very different. Yeah. And the other thing is their health and their mental health condition really impact the way to make the adjustment. Yeah. And mental health condition, usually they have PTSD, and some severe cases, schizophrenia is common too. Yeah. And due to the language barrier, they are very socially isolated. Well, we have TV to watch, we have newspaper to read, we have social media to entertain us, but they cannot go into that, okay? So it is very hard for them to understand their American-born children, you know, what their life is very different from them, yeah. And because of all that, they have limited ability to navigate the very complicated service system. I would say this is the thing that they need a case manager to help them out, to take them to different places for appointments. And they also have very limited understanding the structure in each service system. I mean, most of the structure, like the healthcare, like the school, like the welfare system, they all are very bureaucratic, a lot of bureaucratic procedures, very hard for them to understand. And this is totally beyond their understanding. And planning is another thing that is very difficult for them. They usually go day by day and call us, the case manager, all the time whenever they receive a letter from the government. Okay, yeah, and we have to, even though it may not be related to the client or their child, we have to help them out. I mean, we cannot say no to them. Yeah, I mean, knowing that we are there, they trust us to ask us to help. Yeah. And then another challenge is housing. Many of them are living in a drug and crime-ridden neighborhood, very dangerous. They showed me some gunshot holes in the window, okay? I mean, they don't know what happened, okay? It is very scary for them, and it's not ideal for bringing up their children in that environment. But they are stuck, especially in the Bay Area. It's so expensive to live here. And they settle down, of course, first with whoever sponsor them or whoever they know, and then they move on to find their own apartments or home, and the process is not easy at all. Yeah. Well, I like to go on and talk about the options will work best for them based on my work experience. First, I would say actively offer service help to them. Do not wait for them to call you or to ask. I mean, knowing their pattern of help-seeking behavior is very, very passive. They feel sometimes maybe embarrassed to help, to ask for help. And so Americans usually think, oh, you don't ask, that means you don't have any needs for service. It's not the case. It's not the case. You have to offer, even though they don't ask, because they don't know. Yeah. And so the second thing is their perspective on training versus serving. Well, if they have a special need kid, they serve them. They don't buy the idea of training them because they think that they cannot learn, okay? But it is not the case. They can learn. So it is that we have to do a lot of education on the parent to make them understand. And I mean, if it is not special need kid, a regular kid, you know, you have to understand that they can learn to do a lot of things on their own. If you don't train them to do that, then they will, in front of their peers, they don't have any confidence to do anything. I mean, I was doing some consultation for Head Start program back in the old days. And then a lot of those 3-year-old, 4-year-old, they don't know how to use their fingers to hold the cup or to put things away after you drink or eat in the sink. They don't do those things because they are well served by their parents, okay? And the parent told me they use the hand to punch them if they are getting frustrated because they sometimes are very delayed in language development. So they punch their parents. And so I said that you have to teach them to learn how to use their hand to do things for themselves. But the parents always say the teacher should teach them how to hold the pen and write ABC and 1, 2, 3, those academic stuff. But they don't understand. Basic things happen from 3 to 5 that you need to teach them how to use their hand correctly. Yeah. And so that they can gain the confidence in front of their peers. Yeah. I mean, parents have to understand how Americans teach their kids. Yeah. The American push their kids to do a lot of things. Yeah. And not to serve them all the time. I mean, some parents I can see, they serve the kid until they become 18. This is ridiculous, okay? Yeah. And I also want to share with you, because of the language, it is easier for them to use their eye to learn to process information. So I encourage to use video to do show and tell, okay? I know a program very well. They use video taping how they make the kid learn how the progress and the planning development. They use video. So it is easier for the parents to understand it that way. Instead of writing, they don't read most of the time, okay? Well, the American born, they read, but usually those things are very complicated to remember. So it is good to have a video. These days, the cell phone can serve that purpose. Yeah. And so the other thing is many immigrants are very unfamiliar with our professional titles and what are our job duties. So very hard to remember, okay? I mean, for example, in IEP meeting, there's always a resource person. They don't understand that, okay? They see all the people in the school are teachers, yeah. And I think it's easier to make them understand who is the decision-making person, who is the person they can call if they have urgent needs. I think it's making it easier for them. And I think you can designate a person like a case manager to be there so that they can have somebody who can connect and then to tell the other parties, maybe you can help out, later on. Yeah, this is for them to understand your role is difficult, very difficult. Yeah.
So Esther, maybe just one more minute.
Okay, so I would say to make personal contact is better than meetings, because sometimes group meetings remind them in the communist days that those class purging is all coming into one group meeting. So you make personal contact with them is better, okay? To build the trust, it is something I really think is important, especially offer them solid help and tangible things that they can see and feel. And crisis time is the best time to engage them, okay, to build trust. And you can use a case manager, a bilingual case manager from the regional center to be in the meeting that they can help cultivate the understanding. And the very last thing is I always want to make the parents as partner in education, in their children's education. And I think a multidisciplinary approach is the best, that you can call different parties to come in, like the doctor, not the doctor, maybe the medical personnel or the preschool personnel, talk about the child development. And so to meet with the school and the parents together to develop goals and plans in learning, and to make them as partner in the kids' education is to do one very important thing: consistency in training between the school and home has to be always together. If they are doing different things, it is difficult for the kid to learn. So this is it.
Thank you, Esther.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have some time for questions. If you have a question, okay. From Dana Eaton, are there any exemplary children's books that any of you would recommend that accurately share about the culture and experiences of the Southeast Asian immigrants and/or refugees? Anyone can answer.
There are probably not exemplary, but I just can't remember the one I read out loud at a book literacy fair. I'm gonna look for it right now, and as soon as I can find it, because I took a picture of it after I read it, wanting to get it for my daughter. But I don't want to hold it up.
There's one book called A Spoonful of Rice, children book by Cambodian American. That's one that I know. A lot of the book that I have is based on autobiography and memoir, and of course the Cambodian genocide. Other than that, there's a lot of history book, but not specifically literature based on trauma. It's now among a researcher. It's a field where we're looking into getting understanding the impact of trauma and how we can help solve future generation to interrupt trauma for continuing.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question that you'd like to ask? Dana said thanks. I have actually a question, and it's about that, what you've all touched upon, where there's that cultural aspect of family and more of that interdependence versus sort of that American do things on your own, even sort of like you're supposed to brag about yourself. That's seen as a good thing in America, whereas that's like, stop talking, like your parents, if you have immigrant parents, are often telling you stop showing off, or, like you're supposed to be more, collectively oriented as opposed to just thinking about yourself. Did you personally have that issue with your parents not understanding maybe that more independent, that encouragement to be independent in the American education system? And if that actually was clashing?
Yeah, I mean, there's no greater clashing than when I wanted to go away to college. I mean, it was customary. It's a gender issue too, I think, as well as it is a um, cultural issue and wanting to have independence, especially when I wanted to go to UC Santa Cruz. My mother supported me, so she helped advocate. But it was just unusual and uncomfortable for my father that I would want to go away from home because you're supposed to stay as a daughter with the family generally. Being the only daughter with three brothers, that's what he thought I would do. And that's not how I am. But I did come back home and I'm still, the one that actually is still kind of overseeing a lot of my parents' stuff. And whenever they have medical driver's license issue, social medical issue, any issue, it comes to me.
Mhm.
Well, I can share that for Cambodian, it's almost like a compound issue of cultural, and also I see trauma embedded in the parental decision for for holding their children and just working for their children to death and not thinking of themselves, right? I have that moment of trauma that I didn't know. I came here as a teenager, so as a child I was exposed to violence, right? So as a teenager here, I of course recover and went through a whole so many years of denial that I'm just like among any other refugee. I don't even identify myself as Cambodian unless I was asked. So that has helped me. But once I get to be parent, right? When I became a parent, I had this trauma. I took my 10-month-old on the plane for the first time and couldn't understand the cultural that I keep thinking how different American culture was when the instructions say to put the oxygen mask on yourself first as an adult, then help your kid later. I
Mhm.
was I was so upset and couldn't understand, thinking that, oh my God, if I do that, I wouldn't love my kid. And how is it that you don't put your kid 100% before you? So my mentality was about putting my child before me. And and not until I'm older and realize that, oh my God, I was so wrong. That if I'm no longer, and this is after I watched so many survivors, so many adults suffer who save a whole bunch of money for their children and limited themselves from taking correct prescription medication where they have to pay, and of course they die. It's part of their trauma and survival guilt, and thinking that the kid would be better off. Where I spoke to the kid, second generation, who say, all I want was to have my father around for me. And that's when I realized that without the parent, without the adult, there will be no one to guide and support the child, right? Without parent from home, educator. So how do we expect our student, all students, to be successful and continue on thriving into their adulthood and become a citizen of the country? So
Mhm.
that was my moment, and I realized that we need to consider that not only that culture that's telling us that yes, for the Cambodian culture, if you're a woman, you can't move out of the house until you get married, period. And how that play in our American society, and double that with the trauma where they came from. So that's where uh, we have to kind of help support each other, how to navigate and help students from that population kind of move in and ease through understanding like the curriculum is offered, for example, Cambodian American Study, and that's to include not only the language and culture, but the historical context as to why and what happened. And a lot of the students that I spoke to say that if we would have this when we were in K to 12, we would understand our parents much better. We wouldn't have gone through all this anxiety and hardship, whatnot. So we hope that we do our part in supporting the system now that the educational system recognize the importance of understanding each ethnic instead of lump all of us up and making assumption that one size fit all approach, and we get a chance to see the uniqueness of each student, and hopefully that that they success in life.
Yeah, and just to put on top of that, look, so coming from the school district point of view and hearing sort of what administrators or teachers are even saying when they're trying to outreach, and it's not necessarily even just Southeast Asian students, but when they're trying to reach out to a family and kind of getting resistance to the offer of help, it's often mistakenly probably interpreted to being the parent doesn't care, the parent doesn't really value education, or there's something negative kind of put there. Whereas what you were just saying, Sara, was like the point of the perspective was just so very different and coming from such a different place that was seen as the most that's how we're here. So perspective can change the dynamic
that they do things on their own. If you can do things on your own, like your American counterparts, then you have confidence. When you have raised kids in here, you have to make them confident in front of their peers. That can make them successful. Mm-hmm. I want to see the parents to be partnered with the school to help their kids to learn more.
And there's a way to present it to the parents so it's acceptable, right?
Yeah. So if they don't understand, use video to show, how this can be done in school, and they can understand it better that way. Yeah.
I wanted to add that, I want to add another layer to the story I was sharing when my father didn't want me to leave, not only because I was the only daughter, but there was this sense that he worked so hard to protect me and my family, and for me, he couldn't protect me anymore. And that it was out of his hands, and he wouldn't be able to live with himself if he couldn't do something. And I feel that that's kind of another level of, I think I want to illustrate like trauma with what Sara is saying, is that I feel that people who've gone through such traumatic experience take some of the maybe experience they have at a heightened level where it becomes life and death with everything. I mean, for refugee kids like me, I joke about it a lot, but it is intense where when they're in places where they don't feel comfortable, especially in school setting, like many don't come to back to school night, even my generation, because they don't really know what they're supposed to do, or
yes, they don't
know what they're supposed to do and what they're supposed to say to the teacher, or how to engage with the teacher in order to support, because maybe they weren't given proper, I think, support when they were little, so they don't know how to do that. Maybe through watching other people, but I think there's a sense of lack of confidence. I think that what you're referring to, Lauren, not that they don't care, but they just don't feel comfortable because they don't know what that's like, and unfamiliar there.
What can a school district do? What can a school principal do to increase the comfort level of families that fit what you're talking about? Like what should we do?
I think that what I'm seeing more of, just like in any setting, is trying to organize circles for parents with a leader, a trusted leader in the community. It might not be an educator, but somebody in the community that can kind of convene them and explain to them that they feel comfortable and trust to what these educator roles are, what they're trying to do. Because sometimes they see teachers and other people as authority figure, and they don't necessarily want to say anything or speak.
Yes. Yeah.
They're the authority figure. And so they're not
maybe
quite.
a community leader should be present
I'm
in
seeing
those meetings. Yeah.
Groups are getting created for certain, I think, ethnic or cultural communities, just so there's a safe space. Sometimes it starts small, but at least begin to convene. And usually, hopefully if you're a trustee or somebody who's ran for office, you know, somebody in the community that can be the connector.
Okay. I want it's 7:08. I'm gonna see. Nancy says, I don't know how many book recommendations there are in Southeast Asian refugees or immigrants, but California Teachers Association has book recommendations that are very inclusive, and she included a link in the chat. So that's can be a resource for folks looking for that. Okay. So I know we're past our 7 p.m. time, but I was thinking, like, if people could stick around a little longer to answer questions, we would go over a little bit. But so now, like, just kind of wrapping up now, I want to give each of you a chance to, you know, say what you'd like to share with everybody before we end this meeting tonight. Suli, I want to start with you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all for being here on Zoom on a Monday evening, listening to us about our stories and ways do we better support and reduce barrier for Southeast Asian students and families. I think that obviously we're here because it's about partnership. It's about each of us learning and figuring out. A lot of the things that I know I've been a part of is always creating things because it hasn't existed or we don't know where they are. I mean, just an example is just books, children books, like a collection of them. I can't even remember the book's name because I don't even ever hear people talk or see them, right? So I think just these are great discussion, and I hope that we'll have more of it, and asking these questions helps for us to come together to support those who need support and representation. So thank you.
Thank you. Sara?
Well, I wanted to thank you to you all and APISBMA for introducing this topic. It's so crucial. I'm so glad that you're aware of the topic and how we not only in the education field but really feel the need to give a certain equity to all students and parents, and I'm really all about supporting student academic success and personal growth. So I wish you all the best of luck in your field. Thank you.
Thanks. And Esther?
Well, I really appreciate this opportunity. I learned something from Suli and Sara, you know, and I really applaud that you have a Southeast Asian curriculum developing. It is something that is great, you know, and I really not a school person, but I really think if the school can designate a person to be assigned to the family who especially need a lot of help, that would be something that can solve a lot of the barrier issues. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Amy Koo, did you want to pipe in?
Oh, yeah,
Or-
sure.
okay.
We were just going to end with a quick poll because we always want to continuously improve. So if you could shouldn't take more than a minute, less than a minute, just to evaluate the session. So I will pop it up. Can people see the poll?
Yes.
Okay. Oops. Sorry, did the poll end already?
I couldn't answer any of the questions.
If I can restart the poll here, I'll relaunch it. Sorry, I think I accidentally clicked end poll. So the two people who already submitted, can you please enter it again? Sorry about that fat finger there.
I'm not sure what my problem is, but I can't seem to answer the questions, but I can see people answering.
Okay.
It was
Oh,
all,
actually, if you're a co-host, you can't answer.
oh, you can't answer the poll. All right. That explains it.
As long as other people are answering. All right. I think it's slowed down a little bit.
Yeah, a handful of people had to log off probably at 7, so
Okay.
fewer folks.
All right. 12 people have answered. If there's still anyone who needs more time, unmute yourself and say, hold on. All right, I think we're good. Oh, there was one more. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
So if anybody would like to share feedback, please email me, let me know. And if you have questions about APISBMA itself, you can also email me. But thanks so much to our speakers tonight. You are so generous to share your experience and wisdom with us. And hopefully this translates to, better services to our students. Hope you all have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.